Welcome to today's episode of CLCI Live, brought to you by the award-winning and ICF accredited school, Certified Life Coach Institute. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
Hi, everybody out there.
CLCI Live.
Hi.
Wayne Success as Heart.
Before we begin, let's quickly mention that we want you to join in the conversation. We want to hear from you. So please leave your thoughts and all of that good stuff in the chat. We absolutely want to hear from you. Also, before we move on to the next thing, let's not forget to just go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. Do it. That's it for me. All you guys now.
What are we talking about today? We are finishing up our Self-Sabotage 101 series. We've been talking about how we shoot ourselves in the foot a lot, but we are on our final week. Today we are talking about Self-Sabotage 101. Are you a hedonist? Pain and pleasure principle, and going beyond the pleasure principle.
Yeah.
So should we answer that question? Is that what you're saying? Are you a hedonist?
Okay, yeah, dive right in then.
I wasn't volunteering to answer first.
We're telling you to.
You just did.
Yes, but I like simple pleasures. Like literally like getting in bed at night when I'm tired is super pleasurable.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
So yes, I would say I am.
Okay, let's actually clarify what a hedonist first is, because I don't think everyone is so super familiar with ancient Greek philosophy. Pretty much, a hedonist is somebody who believes that pleasure is the most important thing to pursue in life.
Okay,
That's
then
it.
no. I'm gonna retract my answer.
Okay, Jen, what's more important than that?
No, it's not. It's definitely not the most important, but it's.
I'm asking you, what's the most?
For me,
Above pleasure.
meaning.
What the hell does that mean? Also, I might be a little spicy this episode just because I'm feeling spicy prior to the live, so I'm just getting aggression out.
Oh, good.
Feeling spicy, huh?
I feel like we need to hear from other people first if they're.
I hear you, Jen. I do. Saying that, meaning above pleasure, that's definitely a concept that I think, people who are committed to religion, they adapt. They find fulfillment as opposed. Actually, a lot of religions they condone you for seeking ultimate, or I guess an excess of pleasure, I guess is a good way to put it. So I can see that being possible.
So, you mean they get mad at you if you're basically being indulgent?
Yes, my bad. I didn't mean condone. Don't condone. Yeah.
Essentially, is what we're saying. Okay. With regard to, is there something wrong with seeking pleasure?
No.
No.
Well, I think if we just talk about that by itself, probably not. But if it is, an addiction kind of concept, then there could be.
Anybody else? Other thoughts?
Let's get back to the question. We'll just ask people point blank. Lisa, are you a hedonist?
I would say moments of it.
Okay. Brooke, are you a hedonist?
I think that it is important to find joy and meaning in what I do. My preference is not to be miserable. I'm not sure that many people want to. It does exist, but I personally like simple and easygoing kind of existence, and to be able to indulge in small pleasures. And I think that that's important for me.
But is it the most important thing?
Probably not.
Yeah, I would.
It's important though.
Yeah.
It's
But I
important.
feel like if I made my pleasure like the most important thing, I'd end up being miserable.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't like
Yeah.
jive with other human beings and other things. I think it's an oversimplification, truthfully.
Yeah.
Kyle, are you a hedonist?
Answer just black and white, right? Because
I'm asking for black and white. That's it.
yeah.
I'm not going really too deep in it right now. We'll go deeper in it later. But Kyle, are you?
I think I have hedonist qualities, and that I work on when I realize that they're showing. I think like trying to have like a perfect friend group, for example, is some quality, and sometimes I need to be more open to people who I'm meeting. You never know who's on the other side.
Jerome, are you a hedonist?
I don't think so. Just because it's such a crazy concept to me, I can't get on board with it completely. Pursuit of happiness is something I agree with, but the pursuit of pleasure, I don't know, it seems a little different.
We're going to probably have to talk about what pleasure is in a moment, because I feel like we've got a lot of different opinions about that. I myself am not, I would like to be, but I don't think I like have the capability of feeling pleasure for a lot of things. That would probably give most normal people like a sense of pleasure. So like I have to focus on other things. Pleasure's like, oh, that's kind of nice. I get to feel good about whatever it is I'm doing, but it's not like a priority.
Yeah. Last night, coming home really late after travel day, all day travel, all I wanted to do was go to bed. So to copy Jen a little bit on that was the one track mind there.
So that kind of leads into like, what is it exactly when we're talking about pleasure? The understanding that I'm coming to this conversation that's probably different than a lot of people's maybe is that pleasure is basically the satisfaction you get from fulfilling a biological or a psychological need. And that return to maybe homeostasis. So if you're hungry, eating food is pleasurable.
Yeah.
If you're tired, going to bed is pleasurable.
Yeah.
If you find a lack of meaning in your life, finding meaning is pleasurable.
Yeah.
It's less about like, oh, I need like direct serotonin injections into my brain to like, feel good. That's not really what pleasure is in my mind. What about you guys?
That's a good description of returning to homeostasis. I've never thought of it that way. And that truly is for me a lot of what simple pleasure is like, yeah, when you're hungry, eating food is so pleasurable. When you're not hungry though, eating food it's
it can be insufferable, man. I have to force myself to eat sometimes because, like, I have protein minimums I have to reach, and it's like that's brutal. Like sometimes drinking my protein shake at the end of the night sucks, but I'm not enjoying a minute of it. But I know I'm doing it for the right reasons. So it's certainly not gaining pleasure from doing it. I guess I'm ultimately though long-term gaining pleasure because I am long-term experiencing the benefits of doing that, and I know that I would be mad at myself if I didn't do it, right? But in the moment, it sometimes sucks.
So no pain, no gain.
Kind of, yeah, true. Amen. Yeah, certainly put myself through some pain to gain, for sure. So. When Anthony mentioned like not getting pleasure out of things, like certain things that maybe other people do, I think about like, I really do love working out a lot, right? But it's hard sometimes. It's not like I'm always skipping down to the gym like life is good. You know what I mean? Like it's often forcing myself to do it. And I know that like once I'm in the process and once I see the results, it'll be better. But like a lot of times it's not fun going there and I'm making myself do it. And I love it long term, I guess you could say, right?
It's the going part that always sucks. The being part is it's good.
Oh man, but there are moments like doing split like Bulgarian split squats. I'm cursing the whole time, but I know the long-term benefits are there. But I'm like, this is horrible.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like it's a delayed pleasure when you're going through that. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. A really quick one thought here. There's a school of thought as we're going into like this feeling of pleasure and everything that I think needs to be addressed, and it's this motivation feeling, right? And that's that dopamine. Dopamine's our motivating drug. It's our motivator. And so, with regard to that, you'll hear people often say people are either motivated towards pleasure or away from pain.
Yep, I was gonna say.
What are your thoughts about that statement?
It's kind of the same. It's like saying the same thing to me, because if you think of pain and pleasure on a spectrum, if you're going away from pain, you're going towards pleasure. Now, you might be closer to the pain part than the pleasure part, so that's why you're like reframing it in that way. But that's all. To me, it's ultimately saying the same thing, just in different words.
I've used it in class many years ago where I would use that. Typically, people are motivated, just like what we're saying here, towards pleasure or away from pain. And I would use the example of, I don't want to sleep in my car, so I'm doing things that help me move in a way so that I don't have to sleep in my car. Or compared to someone who gets motivated by doing an activity to go on vacation, right?
I love going on vacation. I don't have kids, and it allows me to vacation, and I'm very grateful for that. So we're gonna talk. So like, I think you're right. Like, it's sort of similar, and never mind that my art ruler is a disaster, but this I think is a good demonstration. So like, if this is pleasure, or maybe we'll do it on the other. This is pain, and this is pleasure. So here's our pain, and here's our pleasure. I think it is kind of a misnomer to say we're either motivated away from pain or away from pain or towards pleasure, because we're moving one way or the other. I think what you would want to do more so is sort of, let's say Anthony is at the number 3 here, okay? And so he's closer to the pleasure side. Let's say Lisa's at 5. We'll say Jerome's at 7 and Kyle's at 9 in the pain. So I think that it's more like, how far are we willing to tolerate towards pain before we get motivated to move towards pleasure is kind of what happens. So like, if this is sleeping in my car and this is buying a house, Anthony might be a lot less willing to move towards the scale of sleeping in the car than, let's say, Kyle is down here. He's willing to tolerate a little more pain maybe, and maybe he has to get a little closer to that pain side in order to motivate him towards that pleasure side. So I think it's a matter of what can you tolerate.
It's pretty easy to like achieve those results in real life, because like, can you think about how long could you just sit in an empty room before you get too uncomfortable and you have to do something?
A really long time, actually, because I'm super creative.
Okay, how long, Brooke, do you think?
Probably days.
Days? What happens if... Hold on, but what happens if you have to go to the bathroom? Or
what's in the empty room with me? Oh, I'm not able to pee. I'm thinking like, at least I got like then I'm going to be there. And I'm wrong, because I have a tiny bladder.
I know. What I'm trying to get at, my point is that people in general can only tolerate like doing nothing for so long, because otherwise the natural pain responses you generate from being hungry, from thirst, from boredom are just going to keep increasing, and you have to do something to relieve those sensations. And you can look at it on a larger scale, like just boredom, for example, or if you want to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization, what is interpersonal relationships, things like that. People can only go so long without any of those needs being fulfilled until it gets too much. You have to do something, and you're motivated towards pleasure. And that is a concept that was in some of our readings called the pleasure principle, which was started by good old Sigmund Freud, who basically hypothesized that everybody was motivated towards pleasure. No matter what you said, and if you said you're a hedonist or not, Freud is arguing, yeah, you're essentially a hedonist. Everybody is a hedonist, and we're always motivated towards pleasure. Even for very simple things to the most complex things.
You don't think there are people that seek out pain?
We'll get to that. That's part of it, because Freud, he started with the pleasure principle, then he wrote a book called Beyond the Pleasure Principle, which deals with
Which he likes to do, doesn't he?
that other stuff. Write books?
Well, yeah, there's it's not just Freud, but like Beyond the Pleasure Principle, Beyond Good and Evil.
Well, that's Nietzsche. Yeah. That's all the German folk.
I know people like to go beyond whatever. Sorry, just commenting.
But if let's stick to pleasure for now. How does that show up in self-sabotage with people?
Well, I think we did a lot of research on this, so in a lot of ways, right? I think it becomes a short-sighted versus long-sighted thing, right? I think a big part of this becomes a short-term, immediate gratification versus very long-term. That being said, there are some of it that goes into long-term too. Like it becomes a whole long process, but they're getting that immediate, serotonin release, right? I think of online shopping people, right? Like, and I am a person who window shops. Like I'll look online for a while. I'll do my research. I'll keep things in carts, and I'll think about it, and then I'll pull things out, and then all the stars will align right. I'll order it, and then I gain some level of satisfaction from that. Then it arrives. If it's workout clothes, that's even more exciting, right? Because then I can assemble a really cute outfit to work out in, which is going to keep paying off. I'm going to keep feeling good, right? And I'm getting these little payoffs throughout this process that I love, right? And I'm like excited. I love, one of my favorite things is to put together a fun, cute outfit. It always has been. It's the way I express myself, and I really love it. So it becomes a whole thing, and the whole thing, it's like a little process of getting these little pleasure moments throughout all of it that happens. But that can become very, if not, I could see how very quickly, I've got it under control, but how very quickly people could lose control of something like that and make it sort of become an obsession and become more important than that long-term thinking. It becomes short-term thinking. I want this now. I want to look good at the gym now. But what you're not doing is thinking, okay, am I saving money for maybe something long-term instead? Am I putting myself in debt? Am I making my life harder by getting this immediate gratification versus a more long-term gratification? Thoughts?
I was listening to what you were saying. I think that's probably pretty accurate. I was comparing even myself to what you were saying. I kind of stress over outfits, and you're having fun with them. But is it to, move towards that pleasure, that hedonistic thought, or is it? I guess so, but for a different motivation. Like when I was in person teaching, I would get a new outfit for the same thing because I just felt better in it, so that I would be less self-conscious. Does that say? I don't know if that says the same thing.
So is that you being motivated away from pain because it's self-conscious feeling that's painful for you?
I think so. I think that's what that answer is. Yeah.
So in that book, the book you guys got me, the word book, you know what it is? Words that change minds.
Words that change minds. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I recall, and I might be off a little bit, but it was like 80 to 90% of people are motivated away from pain, and the smaller percentage is towards pleasure. Does that ring a bell at all?
I think that's because of negative brain bias. I think it would have to be because of negative brain bias, right? We it's built into us to obsess over the negative feeling, right? How we felt bad in a particular situation and wanting to prevent that from happening again, than us really remembering how great we felt in another situation. Like the bad is going to resonate 5 times higher than the good.
Yeah.
So I think that that's probably why that comes out that way, with people being motivated towards or away from. I have a weird positive skew that happens with me, mind you, though. I don't want to feel insecure and hate how I look, and that is something that goes into it. I like to feel good when I walk out, but it's also creative expression for me too. So it's like a little bit of both. I like putting together a stylish outfit is something I've always taken pride in. But I definitely understand completely that not wanting to feel, I want to feel it like my best when I'm wearing whatever it is I'm wearing. And so I will definitely, like, that's why I'm constantly purging. Like, how do I feel about this? I don't like it. Get rid of it. Get out of my closet. Why is it here? So I think it's both, though. Like, can it be both? Can we be both?
Yeah, I think it's both at the same time. Even when I was saying what I was saying, I was listening and evaluating. It felt like it was still both, because it was a moving toward a pleasure response, but it was also at the same time avoiding, if we called it pain, it wasn't really pain, but an uncomfortable.
Is it a matter of like perspective? Like, does this glass half full, glass half empty thing come in to it? Or is it
according to what Anthony said, then yes, it would be that. According to what Anthony was saying, is that the pleasure, pain, you're moving in the same direction either way, right? Isn't that what you were saying? Yeah.
If you go with that framework, I'm not saying you should, because you could imagine it in other ways. But if you're thinking about pleasure and pain on the same axis,
yeah.
If you're moving to the left, you're moving away from somewhere and going towards a different place.
I'm going to make an argument, though, that this is way too linear of a thought, right? Like, we're really thinking linear, like it's one way or the other. But let's really think about this here. If I am somebody who is using one thing to gain pleasure. So let's use the online shopping example. I think it's a very tame example that does not make anybody feel weird, because we can go other places, but let's stick with that one. So like online shopping, I could be really focusing on that little pleasure, gaining here, feeling good in the moment. But we're thinking of one line. And I think that person that's fixating is thinking of one line, but what you're not thinking of is how all of these other things might be suffering. Like, maybe you're not paying your bills. Maybe you're paying less on taxes. Maybe because of that, you're not buying the right food, so you're gaining weight. Maybe like there's all of these other things that we could make that could be suffering and be causing us more pain, because we're focusing on a single thing to bring us pleasure.
So what you're talking about, if I'm gonna try my best to just stay in the Freudian, Jacques Lacan psychoanalysis realm, but what you're talking about is a conflict between the pleasure principle and the reality principle. And essentially the reality principle, it serves the pleasure principle. And, children learn this as they grow older, that you can't have things immediately, and you can actually delay pleasure for longer term pleasure. And what you seem to be describing is when those conflicts and how that can lead to self-sabotage, because you're so focused on the short-term pleasure, you ignore possible long-term gains. And I see a lot of this in talk about financial discussions, or everywhere you're seeing people say, save your money when you're young. save your money when you're young because the long-term gains are so much better for you rather than just spending your money and never saving it and always buying these short-term.
And which is, I mean, it takes such like an adult brain to do that too, right? Like, I feel like for most human beings, you have to either be a super worrywart planning type of person, but most people in their 20s, I think, feel a little bit invincible and feel a little bit like we got all this time and feel a little bit like, live fast, die young. And what they're not really thinking is about these big long-term things. There are absolutely people that do, don't get me wrong, but I think that it takes a really special human being to be thinking that far in advance and doing that. Right. Like, my brother is one of those people and I respect him highly for it, but honestly, he is and he isn't. He also spent 9 years in community college trying to figure it all out. So it didn't happen right away.
Way to call out your brother.
Cameron, I love you. You're awesome now. He's amazing now. He's an amazing being who does awesome stuff. So Danger like short-term gratification right now. He's not thinking about my long-term success.
So how does this show up in, I guess, coaching clients? If we're just focused on pleasure, either short-term or long-term, how can that maybe focus or pursuit of pleasure lead to self-sabotage?
Well, I feel like you're asking two questions there. How does it work with coaching? I mean, it's finding out what motivates people, what allows them to keep moving in that space that they're trying to achieve. So if we go with your example, Anthony, the financial picture, save money when you're young, that could be that question. What does that mean? Define it. What allows you to save that money and still feel comfortable? But yet, so we're still even using that line and gravitating back and forth on that line. If we use Brooks' ruler, what allows you to save, which could be painful, to allow for that still feeling comfortable, which is then moving towards pleasure. I mean, there's all coaching world to use, and motivation is going to have that. Could those stumbling you fall, with the decision you made?
I think also one of the things that, if we're not just talking about how it shows up as self-sabotage for our clients, one of the ways that knowing about this pain pleasure, sort of what we do as coaches, is if we have a client that's fixated on a single thing to bring them, this one thing is the only thing that's going to make me happy. I think as a coach, we can be there to sort of open up the world to them and be like, really? Are you sure? And
possibilities.
True. Yeah. And that it's not so linear, right? And sort of show them that it's not such a linear process or not such a linear black and white way of thinking. This is what brings me pleasure. I think it also is something that we do as coaches where we're also able to help the client start to identify all these little outlying factors that might be causing them pain or blocking them or preventing them from moving towards that pleasure that they maybe aren't fully aware of. So it's like we're sort of making them realize it's not such a linear process being a human being and what your choices are and the way you have to go about things. And I think that really plays heavily into this pain pleasure principle kind of thing.
That's changing their zoom lens. So having them zoom in or zoom out on certain things. And what you were just saying, Brooke, is like sometimes they'll try to skate right by something and you catch it and you give them, the opportunity to zoom in on it for a second. And that's sometimes where they can find information that's very, very helpful that they didn't see because it's a blind spot for them. And they are benefiting from that assistance in changing that zoom lens for them. So everything you said was right on.
Another term that I sometimes use is micro and macro. Are you under the microscope? Do you need to see more details, or do you need to go macro out and look at the globe with the bigger picture? Mm-hmm.
I'm also thinking of a client. This is like a client of a client that we had, who she dealt with basically like business folk who needed to manage their time better. And the business folk that, like I think of a particular situation where there was a boss and he was very micromanagey, like very like in everybody's business. And he would get short-term pleasure from that because he would get this short-term feedback of feeling needed, of feeling like he was doing things and feeling like he was important.
Mm-hmm.
But in the big picture lens, what he was not doing was he was losing. He was causing himself more pain because he had a staff that wasn't doing their job to his liking, and he hadn't been training to his liking. He was suffering at home because he wasn't getting home in time to be with his family and be present, and because and so he's wasting all his time doing all of this little micromanaging stuff to get that short-term pleasure and not thinking about that big-term pleasure of, hey, what if you didn't have to do this, which annoys you at times, right? It's both. It can go both ways with them, and we're actually being successful in other places in your life. And that was really largely what she worked on with her clients, was this time management issue. And I think when it comes to time management, that's a big, that's an area where we're probably getting, if we're having a problem there, it's probably a matter of short-term pleasure. We're getting short-term pleasure, but we're not thinking of that big scope long-term, and it's causing us to slide back in other places and get pain, right?
Yeah.
Anthony, thoughts? Or are you reading something?
Reading something.
Kyle too. I haven't heard much from Kyle.
Yeah, I was thinking of like when it came to like an ideal client, like you could constantly be trying to think of someone that you want, that's going to walk in, that you imagine is going to be your perfect client, and you're just not getting them. And maybe you just need to take a step back and just be like, you know what, maybe I need to talk to other people that are looking for different things and see what I do like, what I don't like. And your perspective could change on what your ideal client is when it's just marketing your business and trying to get your attention out there. What's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
You see your shout out, Jen, right there?
Yes, I waved earlier. Hi, Sai. I'm so excited.
You know what was interesting? I know that Joy and Success was probably when they said compounding interest, talking about like the money. We were saying there's that compounding interest, but I think that it kind of applies in this as well as like with regard to that short term versus long term. Like if we're making it's more than just money, we can create compound interest in other areas in our life, like by getting up and working out in the morning, I'm creating a compound interest, because what is that going to do? It's going to give me more energy. It's going to make better things better. And over the long run, if I keep doing that and if I keep doing it every day, I'm going to start to see these other things, and it compounds and snowballs. And it's like, it's more than just money, right? We can create that compounding interest, good or bad, like painfully or good. We can also compound interest with bad choices or things that hurt us and cause us pain. And I think we do it. I mean, I think everybody does it. We all do it for one reason or another.
Definitely all do it. There's a really good book on it. It's called The Compound Effect, and it goes into like detailed descriptions of how you're either compounding positively or negatively. And so he kind of goes into like a story about a guy who just, has an extra couple drinks on the weekends, eats a little extra greasy food, and, doesn't really connect with his wife. And then 2 years down the road, he's like miserable and he's like going to get divorced, and it's just like these little things that compound and add up that we don't realize are actually going to compound into big pain if we're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too that falls in. So one of the things that they've found in studies, and this is the paradox, the hedonistic paradox, the pleasure paradox, is that the more somebody is seeking pleasure, the less pleasure they tend to be getting over time. Right. So the more work I am doing towards pleasure, my work is here. They sort of go back and forth. So the more I'm consciously seeking out pleasure, the less pleasure I'm probably gaining. Whereas the more I am just sort of like just going, being in the moment, being okay, celebrating the little things, finding the pleasure in the tiny things without it being like I have to be happy. This is what's going to make me happy. Those people tend to experience more pleasure. And I think it comes to that seesaw, right? Like if we're actively seeking pleasure, what we're doing is putting ourselves out of whack, and we've got to at some point swing it back. And so we're getting this in that concept of homeostasis. And I think it's important to cause the stresses too. Like, I think we should make ourselves uncomfortable. We should cause micro pain so that we can get stronger, but we're always trying to sort of find, it's better to resonate for me here in the middle than to resonate here. And I think that's where like the happiness is in the details, the happiness in the little things.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is exactly what couples will go through and say, you know, I want the smaller, I'm going to call them gifts. I don't really mean gifts as a tangible thing, but you know, the smaller compliments, the time together, so gifts versus the grand vacation that's once every so often. I'd rather the smaller gifts than the grand overture gift, because the smaller gifts have a tendency to build and feel really big than the one time that we get that grand gift.
I mean, I think about it too, like I said, I love traveling. We went to New Zealand, but I cry at the end of any big trip because I love it so much. And I enjoy it. And there's only so much, like, I can carry that with me, you know. It's amazing. It's this overwhelming experience of just freedom and you know, when you go and do that vacation thing, but then you come back and you're like, man, maybe it's better to have every day be a vacation. You know what I mean? But that's not, I mean,
or maybe it's better to never go on vacation.
But it's true, and it's a real thing. You can look it up. There is it's an actual, they call it post-vacation depression, where people will absolutely go from a vacation, they'll come home and they will experience a low of depression. And what is that? That's that seesaw, right? Yeah. So make yourself a little miserable on your vacation. So yeah, it's not so bad coming back. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I can't wait to get back to work.
But it is sometimes, though, it is sometimes relieving to just get back to the normal and like I'm finding those little things to look forward to and get back to that. I think too. But an interesting thing that happens is that people, we send our pleasure chemicals all over the place, and we've got to somehow come back to our resonating sort of normalcy.
Well, and when I was talking, it was an either or, but there's also combinations of the big things as well as the little things that, you know, you just talked about that journey, and it's beautiful.
I think that comes into, I mean, we start to move into this state thing of balance, which is what our next month's topic is going to be, just so everybody knows. Tune in. We'll get into more of that later. So Anthony, one thing was mentioned, you said you'll get to it later, and I want to ask you about it now.
Okay.
Are some people seeking pain?
Yeah, so throughout this whole self-sabotage thing, like the way I imagined it was like a graph, kind of like one axis you've got going towards something, and on the other side you're going away from something, and you can either be going towards success or away from failure, towards failure or away from success. So when we talked about like the fear of success, that's like talking about people who are avoiding or trying to get away from success for whatever reasons. Most of the times through coaching and through the pleasure principle, we assume our clients are going towards pleasure or going towards whatever will give them fulfillment. And we're also talking about like, oh, I'm motivated by avoiding pain. We kind of assume that as well in our clients. However, and Freud sort of observed this happening, and then he had to sort of rethink his theories, but I want to ask you guys, in your real life experiences, have you ever encountered somebody in coaching or in your personal lives that seemed to be motivated towards failure or motivated towards pain?
Yes, because it would affirm who they thought they were. it was like reinforcing, this is who I am.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was something that they're not seeing that they're doing it, but I could see it very clearly. It made them feel comfortable and validated to stay exactly as they were in that pain.
So I've seen that. I got to see this when I used to work at a casino as a security guard. I would see this literally every single day, the same people over and over again at the slot machines. And there's pamphlets and signs that say, "Got a gambling addiction? Seek help." These people know that gamble, like, it's not like how Brooke gave the example of like, oh, I'm like doing these little purchases. But like over time, Brooke, you're making more money than you're spending. So that's not really an example of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who, I saw one example of a guy who went into the high roller room, and from what I heard from my friends who worked in the room, that he supposedly sold his house, took all the money, and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in the high roller room and nothing. Just lost everything.
Oof.
Gosh.
And that's not including all the drugs and other crazy stuff that happens.
Well, do you think that he was seeking out pain though? Like, I mean, I guess on some level he is, right?
Here's another example that I'll give that's kind of similar to gambling. My friend Brooke knows this friend. This is when the AMC stocks were popping up, and it was AMC and GameStop.
Yeah.
And he bought AMC with me, and at a certain point it reached its high, and I sold mine. And what he told me was, I like the feeling of like seeing it go up and down, and when it's down, like, it feels like great. And it's so mind-boggling to me to like wrap my head around that, but I kind of get it. But I'm mostly talking about people who deliberately do things they know are not good for them and are against their self-interest, but they do it anyways.
I don't know if that's like, yeah, I get it. Like, they're self-punishing, but I think of like people who are stuck in a victim state, like,
Yeah.
That really is what first came to mind with me, is people who are in this victimhood and they're living like everything they do is a confirmation that they are a victim of something.
Yeah.
And they're like not in control and not in power of their own lives.
Yeah.
And so it may not be that they're consciously seeking these things out, but what they're doing is throwing themselves into situation after situation where they end up, because they are a victim and they have no control over their emotion or that situation, and they end up being victimized in these situations over and over from their perspective.
Or they deliberately like put themselves in bad relationships constantly,
it's like a learned
with the
habit.
same
Yes,
people.
and they're used to doing that. There's somebody that comes to mind right now that and stays in it, but keeps throwing herself into these hopeless situations, like these situations where, what do you expect? It's been the same way over and over and over. That's not going to change. What has to change is you. And I think that is something that comes up absolutely in our clients and at some point in a lot of people's lives, where you have to realize, oh man, the change has to happen here. I really cannot affect change here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or they just
and the solution, right? They get to that moment where they have to accept that. Some of them won't. I mean, some people that's too hard. But the people that are willing to accept I'm both the problem and the solution, that they're very coachable, those people.
Yeah. And so this comes from what Freud and then Lacan and then other modern day philosophers talk about is death drive. Because initially Freud was under the assumption that everybody's working towards the pleasure principle, but he would observe case studies where what we would describe now as trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder, people are reliving these same things for no real good reason, or they're stuck in these cycles. So part of it is there's like two like parallel ideas of death drive. Brooke, go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna go.
You can just go. Anyways,
I know.
two sort of parallels idea of what death drive is. One is the return to like nothingness or zero, where I'm going towards failure. The other is what Brooke was talking about, is being stuck in this repeating cycle that doesn't really lead to anywhere. You're just stuck with what we usually call our blocks in the coaching realm.
Yeah. So, death drive, would that kind of consider somebody who just has given up, has no intention, I guess, on living a happy life? They've just completely given up, and just everything they do is just spiral downward because they feel like it's over already? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be an example of death drive.
And the only thing they recognize are the things that support that spiral. They don't recognize things outside of, they don't really notice the positive.
Okay.
And this isn't limited to like people with like maybe psychiatric disorders. Like everybody who's alive has to balance between their life drive or the pleasure principle versus death drive, which is trying to pretty much return to nothingness. And I'm starting to get into like territory where like I'm not entirely convinced. But it's just one hypothesis as why people go towards failure sometimes.
I mean, I had a phase where that was self-destructive. It absolutely did, and it was like a hit eject run, and I just careened through one bad choice after the other. But what I can tell you, I can tell you now, looking back, what I felt in that moment, I felt like I was like trying to survive, right? So I didn't have the ability or the clarity or even the knowledge to be able to really even make healthy choices, because I felt like I was in this sustained state of panic and this sustained state of I have to survive. I don't know what to do. My entire life is changing. I have no idea. And it was like this just like full blown panic, and it just meant bad choice one after the other. And it was now in retrospect, clear-headed with life, different and okay. I can look back and I can go, man. But I think that I had to do, part of me feels like I had to do that. Like that it had to happen for me to be the person I am today and appreciate life as it is today. Otherwise, I would probably still be a ticking time bomb. Because I don't think I would have gotten to this place of independence and clarity and calmness without sort of having lost everything and let go of everything and destroyed everything and just like went boom, eject, right? And there's a lot of reasons that went into that. And it was basically being so unhappy and wanting just being in such a state and not knowing how to change it. And the only way I could was to just lose it all. And I regret it. I don't regret now, but I did regret it, a lot of it, for a long time, because I was like, man, I could have handled that better. But I'm sure there was ways for me to do so, but that was just my path, right? And I almost feel like for me to be as grateful as I am, I had to take myself to a point that I can appreciate what it is not to have what I have today. I feel like I grew up in a very nice neighborhood with money, with family, and I didn't know what it would be like. I had no clue. I was so naive. And so I feel like I had to almost do that in order for me to have an appreciation, because that's how I had to learn.
That painful season of your life actually created
the ability to be as happy as I am now. Because I think about with having all of that stuff I had, and I had happy moments, there was a lot of fun that was had, but I felt like I resonated in a place of just uncomfort and sadness and kind of depression and isolation. It was where I felt alone, no matter where I was and how many people were around me. There was a lot of good, and I was being creative and a lot of great things happening, but I would always go back to this state of just sort of not feeling appreciative for my life and wanting something else and wanting more. And then I think I had to lose a lot of that. Mind you, there's a lot of things going on. I had family with mental health issues that I was living with and having to take care of. And so like just all of these things going on. that I finally just hit eject and was really selfish human being for a while. And then when I didn't want to be that anymore, and when I wanted to figure my life out and put things back together, I had to deal with the damage, right? And the things that I had done and rebuild trust, and all of these things had to happen. But now I know I'll never make those mistakes again, right? Because I know I'm not that person. And I feel like I had to do that. And it was a painful time. It was really painful. I have paintings and drawings from that time, and it's really sad. That's another thing. Artists who, I had a friend, side note, who is a very big singer, and she loved being depressed because she was the most creative when she was. Like, she was the most, like, she would write the most, she would get it all out the most, and she almost would like create these situations that were sort of hopeless, and then she would love it because she'd be sent in and she'd be more creative through heartbreak, through pain. And so that was a whole thing. And if you hear her music, it's definitely in there, like, for sure. So yeah.
That sort of tracks with, like, if you do feel like a good amount of pleasure in your life, in the sense of like homeostasis, balance, comfort, why are you motivated to do things, I guess, in that sense? Like, it seems like for coaching to happen, there has to be something imbalanced, something that's driving someone forward to achieve something. Because if you were just fine and you were just happy with the way things were, you wouldn't bother with being coached in the first place.
I don't know about that either, though, because I tend to be like a really happy and grateful person, and I love trying new things and going to do new things. And I don't know that happens because I'm upset about anything. Like, you know what I mean? Or
I don't know about upset about anything, but like, maybe I would ask the question, like, why do you like doing those things? Like,
so like I signed up for aerial. I want to learn to be better at aerial. So what do I have to do? The steps is I gotta learn and grow. And I'm mad that I can't do a pull-up. So maybe that's why I want to be able to have good form and be able to actually do it. So maybe that's my discomfort and my pain, is that I don't have the ability to right now. So I know I have to suffer through some pain and growth and be patient, and in order to get to that thing that I want. And I think a lot of times where coaching comes in is when we lose our way sort of to getting to that thing. We know that there's something we want to do, or we want to be, or a person or a feeling, and we just haven't been able to find the steps to get there. And I know, like, if in this case of aerial, I've been looking for something and a way to do this for a long time, and I'm trying here. And so I've been talking and sharing with people, and it was in all of that sharing that I finally found a step. Oh, I can do this. This is awesome. Because it does feel like starting something new is like a big world of unknown. And I think that having a sounding board or a coach or somebody to talk to when you're taking those big, scary steps is a very powerful tool.
Yeah. You can always benefit from a sounding board, from someone to help you adjust your zoom lens, from someone to show you blind spots. I mean, yeah.
I know I will throw into our thing all the time. Hey, ladies, what do you think of this versus this? I mean, that's that sounding board. And some people just don't have that in their lives, right? They don't have a positive support. They don't have somebody to talk to. They don't have this. And that's really something that we can do as a coach for people.
Yeah.
And some people have crappy friends who don't want to listen and be there and support, right? We're not as lucky. Yeah. Yes, aerial equals gymnastic rings, kind of, and like the big ring, circle ring that you, it's like a circus. Essentially, I want to join the circus.
That part. This is a circus.
Right?
Also, join success. I do agree. Fleetwood Mac wrote Rumors, I think, was the album that was like their best album, and it was because of all the horrific stuff that was happening behind the scenes.
That's the creative brain. Like we tend to, when we're experiencing pain, we get it out through creativity.
So the lesson is,
No.
this is my final takeaway. Yes,
No, Anthony,
because
don't
we're getting
say it.
to our point right now where we gotta give our final thoughts. If you want to achieve great things, you have to suffer immensely to do it.
No, but that's we've done it. If you want to check out the Anti-Fragile episode, I think that Anti-Fragile episode really helps speak into this, where we want to create micro stresses. Like we want to, it's just like building muscle. You've got to tear that tissue. You've got to experience that burn. It has to suck a little bit, and you want to feel that soreness, so that you can grow, and so that you can be stronger and more successful. So like creating these micro tears. If I had been micro tearing younger and maybe at a younger age, I would have been more prepared for these big tears. But I think my life was just a lot more oscillated, a lot like this, until I found I know, Jen, you talk about Zen Jen. I think we had a similar experience where we were like this.
Yeah.
And we found a way to be like this and realize it's better like this.
Yep. I was not Zen Jen most of my life. I was chaotic, neurotic, volatile, crazy Jen for most of my life. And that actually is what led me to become more Zen Jen like.
I was just a hardcore people pleaser, and like I felt like I had to take care of everybody in my life, and I was not taking care of myself. And so I think that's why I had to hit eject and go the full other direction, where I just became very selfish. And then I realized, okay, now stop being selfish. Let's find that middle ground. You don't have to be one or the other, So yeah.
Lisa, final thoughts?
Final thoughts are, I think you have to experience the fullness of growth. I think you have to not try and stop it. A lot of times new coaches, here's where I'm going. It's like, where am I going with this? A lot of coaches will try to prevent their clients from experiencing any hardship, pain, whatever term you would want to use there. And the thing that I've learned, it's not for me to stop them. It's for me to be in that moment when they're with me, the best support and coach I can be whilst they're there, and help them find their, hi David, help them find their really just grounded space where they really can blossom from, those micro tears that Brooke was speaking about, to really have the strength. I've had people go, how can you let your daughters do that? Because they have to learn and grow themselves. They have to know what this is in order for them to get to that side. We use the ruler concept. It's not for me to stop them. It's for me to love them in that moment.
Kyle, final thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking about rock climbing because that's what I'm going to do after this. And to go through it, there's a lot of pain and lessons learned. There's a lot of blisters. You'll see people wrap their hands. There's a lot of practice falling. But you go through it ultimately for this journey of, I want to be good at something. I want to be able to go outside and maybe climb. I want to enjoy Colorado while I'm here and different parts of nature. And that's by learning to fall, that's learning to fail forward, but suffering through the pain, knowing that there's an outcome that you're reaching for. And if that makes me a hedonist, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but then that makes me one. But it's worth it at the end of the journey, so that I limit it and I know that's responsible. I'm not doing things that are life altering, like free climbing,
Or gambling your house away.
Yeah, something like that, and doing something where your life is at risk and acknowledge there is a limit to this hobby or these habits that you pick up.
I think that's like healthy though, because you're causing yourself some pain to ultimately get the pleasure. So you're already kind of balancing that act. Like that balance act is already sort of happening for you in that moment. Also, Lisa, you had mentioned not the clients, like not telling the client or letting them experience the pain. everybody else on the planet and in your client's life has probably warned them, given advice, told them not let them walk through that door. And us as a coach, we're hopefully the first place where they don't experience all of that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Don't hurt yourself. You might, all of those warnings, and we allow them to sort of explore freely. So.
Well, don't hurt yourself. Like we gotta report if you do, but metaphorically go through painful experiences because you'll grow from it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you have to go and seek them out, to be honest.
They'll come to you.
Life happens, and then you can either choose to learn and grow from it, or you can choose to only notice the negative concepts.
Jerome?
I'm just excited about, I know we spoke about it a little bit today, next week's topic, balance, because that's one of my core beliefs. So I just kind of want to remind you guys again that we will be speaking about balance next week and throughout the month of August. Is it? Yeah, August. So
I know, it's August already. Welcome to August, everyone. Jeez.
We're already a week in.
I know.
So,
It's crazy.
happens so fast.
School's getting ready to start here.
School started here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So what are you going to do? You're going to like, or what do I do? Comments over. Like, share.
you can still comment.
Subscribe.
Still comment. Please comment. We'll check your comments.
Yeah. Come
Follow.
check us out. Our 3-day intensives are really a lot of fun and full of information. Even if you just come for your own self growth and you're never going to become a life coach. It's really, really great information.
It's a very pleasurable class.
Mhm.
Yes.
And also,
There might be a little bit of pain if you're not too
your first-
comfortable
your
doing new
first
things,
breakout.
but
Yeah.
you feel great coming out of
is
it.
painful,
Yeah.
not gonna lie.
Well, but it's not too bad.
But after that, it's
After
a
that,
very
it's-
pleasurable class.
Did we hit
We're
all
scaring
the
people.
we're supposed to?
All right. Check us out. Goodbye.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, this is brought to you by Certified Life Coach Institute. We're an ICF accredited school who certifies our life coaches in 3-day online intensive courses. In addition to other podcast episodes, feel free to check us out every Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube or Facebook for our CLCI Lives, where we get together and discuss various topics that are centered around sharpening your skills so you can become a better certified life coach. For more information, feel free to visit us at certifiedlifecoachinstitute.com. Until next time, be well.